Hi again. Ray Francis' scriptural readjustment continues. The discussion followed the same predictable pattern, except that the circuit overseer was inclined to interrupt my statements to the point that I finally had to ask him, as a guest in my home, that he at least wait until I had finished an expression before breaking in. At this point, in a footnote, Ray inserts something he heard during this section of the conversation, a beep beep a couple of times, suggesting that the conversation was being taped by Wesley Benner. Ray goes on, the readjustment was once more based on the Watchtower, not on Scripture. Again, when asked if they really considered Peter Gregerson to be a wicked man of the kind described in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, or an antichrist, as described by the Apostle John, neither had any comment. I drew their attention to Romans chapter 14, where the apostles stress the need to be true to conscience, that anyone who does something while doubting that it is approved of God thereby sins. Since everything that is not out of faith is sin, Paul says. Since the scripture states that anyone pronouncing the wicked one righteous and anyone pronouncing the righteous one wicked, even both of them are detestable to Jehovah. That's a quote from Proverbs 17 verse 15. I could not conscientiously violate that principle by viewing or treating Peter Gregerson as a wicked person when all I knew about him told me otherwise. Benner's response was that if I had to be guided by my conscience, so did the elders have to be guided by theirs. That is, this was my position, that if this was my position, then they would have to take action accordingly. Evidently, the conscience of the elders did not allow for respecting the conscience of another man, showing tolerance. What kind of action was meant was made quite clear by his further expression. He said he simply viewed himself as one who conveyed the things provided by the organization. Using his own words, he said, I parrot what the governing body says. This was stated with evident pride, for what reasons I could not understand. I have never viewed being a parrot as an achievement of any great merit. Not long after this, the conversation ended and they left. Tom Gregerson shook his head in disbelief, saying the experience had been revealing but depressing, that he would not have believed that men would say such as he had heard. By the end of November, the same judicial machinery that had functioned in Brooklyn began functioning in Gadsden. Phone calls asking one thing after another came from the elders. I was advised that a judicial committee would meet with me. I had been planning to write to the governing body to submit my resignation to membership in the Society's corporations. I had been a voting member of both the Pennsylvania and the New York corporations for several years. Along with informing the body that I was resigning from membership, on November 5th I wrote, locally, certain elders have taken the information in the September 15th, 1981 Watchtower as authorization to demand a change in my relationship with the man on whose property I live and for whom I work, Peter Gregerson. They state that, since he has disassociated himself, I should view him as among those with whom one should not eat, wicked persons and antichrists, and that failure to conform to this position requires disfellowshipping. Approaching 60, having no financial resources, I am in no position to move or to change my employment. So I would very much appreciate knowing if the intent of your statements is that issue of the magazine is truly as they present it, namely that my accepting an invitation from my landlord and employer to eat with him is grounds for disfellowshipping. If instead they have exceeded the intent of what was published, some counsel of moderation would grant me relief from a situation that is potentially oppressive. I will appreciate whatever clarification you can give, whether directly or through one of your departments. That's the end of Ray's request to the governing body. He goes on, that same day a phone call came from the elders. Their calls had been so numerous and the approach so unbrotherly that my wife and I both began to feel emotionally upset every time we heard the phone ring. I instructed my wife that if the elders phoned, and I was not there, that she should inform them that anything they had to say, put it in writing. So she now passed this information on. The next day, the appointed Judicial Committee wrote the letter arriving November 10, 1981. Many of Jehovah's Witnesses find it incredible that I was actually disfellowshipped because of eating a meal with a man, Peter Gregerson. Some insist this could not be the case. I believe the correspondence that now developed makes the matter plain. The first letter sent by the Judicial Committee was dated November 6, 1981, and we'll read that in the next segment. His conclusion, having read the letter and responded to it, is this. This letter makes clear that one charge, and one charge only, formed the basis for their judicial action, namely my association with a disassociated person. The correspondence in the next segment.